They said lightning never strikes twice, but Hollywood in the late 70 seconds and 80 seconds was determined to prove otherwise. After Star Wars exploded into a cultural supernova, studios worldwide scrambled to ride its hyperspace coattails. Most attempts fizzled into cosmic junk, but a handful? They weren't just shameless clones, they were strange, dazzling, and against all odds, worth your time. So, here's the question. If you've only seen Star Wars, have you really seen the weirdest corners of the galaxy? Buckle up, because you're about to. Message from Space 1978. Japan didn't just copy Star Wars, they fired back with their own intergalactic epic, complete with glowing seeds that replaced the Force. Directed by Kinji Fukasaku, the same mastermind behind Battle Royale years later, this film was Toei Studios' grand attempt to beat Hollywood at its own game. Released just a year after Star Wars, it was the most expensive Japanese production of its time, boasting lavish costumes, elaborate miniatures, and a cast that somehow included Sonny Chiba and Vic Morrow. The story kicks off with 8 mystic seeds, floating through space to find champions destined to save a dying planet. It sounds poetic, right? Until you realize those seeds glow like radioactive peanuts and magically land in the laps of the chosen ones, who range from a drunk prince to a hotshot pilot. Instead of Jedi discipline, we get destiny delivered like interstellar Amazon Prime. Visually, it's a kaleidoscope. Ships blaze across the screen with a neon glow, battle scenes swirl in chaotic colors, and the costumes look like disco met samurai armor in the best way possible. Critics in the West dismissed it as a cheap knockoff, but in Japan it was celebrated for its spectacle. Over the years, it's developed cult status among fans who appreciate its mix of earnestness and chaos. What makes Message from Space worth watching today is not its polish, it's the sheer ambition. It's Star Wars filtered through a Japanese lens, fusing Western space opera with Eastern myth. And the final act, where the ragtag crew pulls together against impossible odds, has the same pulse-pounding energy that made Star Wars legendary. Sure, the glowing seeds might make you laugh, but the movie's heart is big enough to win you over. This isn't just a copy. It's an alternate universe where George Lucas traded lightsabers for samurai swords dipped in glitter. Space Hunter, Adventures in the Forbidden Zone 1983. If Star Wars met Mad Max and then got shoved through a 3D projector, you'd end up with Space Hunter. Released in 1983, this Canadian-American mashup was designed to cash in on 2 crazes at once, the 3D boom and the unstoppable wave of sci-fi adventures. Peter Strauss stars as Wolf, a grizzled space trucker who answers a distress signal on a toxic wasteland planet. He's in it for the bounty, of course, but he ends up saddled with an unlikely sidekick, a scrappy teenager played by a young Molly Ringwald. Yes, before the Breakfast Club, she was running around alien deserts, firing off wisecracks and stealing scenes. The setup is simple, but wild. 3 wealthy women crash land evil ruler Overdog, kidnaps them, and Wolf has to trek across a planet, crawling with mutants, scavengers, and monstrous creations to get them back. Overdog, played by Michael Ironside, isn't just a villain, he's a nightmare vision of a man fused with a giant mechanical exosuit. Imagine Darth Vader, if Darth Vader had been rebuilt by a junkyard artist with a love of carnival rides. Production-wise, the film leans hard on grit. Instead of sleek ships and shiny armor, we get rusty vehicles roaring through deserts, toxic swamps, and deadly trap-filled arenas. It feels less like a galaxy, far, far away, and more like a wasteland you could stumble into if you took the wrong exit off the highway in the 80 seconds. Critics weren't impressed, but audiences turned out anyway, making it a moderate success and cementing it as late-night cable gold. What saves Space Hunter from being just another cheap knockoff is its energy. Strauss plays Wolf with rugged charm, Ringwald injects spunk into every scene, and Ironside chews the scenery with gusto. The movie knows it's pulpy, and it leans into the absurdity. Watching it today feels like uncovering a VHS time capsule of pure 80-second sci-fi weirdness. It doesn't just echo Star Wars, it asks, What if Han Solo got lost in a Mad Max movie and brought a bratty teenager along for the ride? And the answer is, surprisingly, a lot of fun. Galaxina 1980. Some Star Wars rip-offs try to dazzle you with effects. Galaxina went the other way. It leaned on camp, awkward comedy, and an android heroine played by a rising star who tragically never lived to see its cult status. Released in 1980, the film was directed by William Sachs, a man better known for quirky indies than space sagas. His idea was simple: mash space opera with parody, sprinkle in some lowbrow humor, and let audiences laugh at how absurd things could get in the galaxy. The plot follows the crew of the Infinity, a ragtag bunch of bumbling space cops sent to recover a powerful crystal known as the Blue Star. Sound familiar? Of course it does. But instead of noble Jedi, we get a captain more interested in relaxing, a crew more focused on clownish antics, and Galaxina, the silent, graceful android who becomes the heart of the film. Played by Dorothy Stratton, then Playboy's Playmate of the Year, Galaxina steals every scene with her quiet presence, contrasting the loud nonsense around her. Production values were, let's say, modest. Sets looked like leftovers from a local sci-fi convention, and the space shots were nowhere near Lucasfilm's level. But Sachs leaned into parody. You get barroom brawls full of bizarre aliens, stormtrooper lookalikes called Solar Knights, and jokes that range from goofy to groan-worthy. Think of it as Star Wars by way of a college skit, group that somehow got financing for a feature-length film. Critics savaged Galaxina when it came out. They called it clunky, cheap, and aimless. And yet, decades later, it has earned a cult following. Part of that is because of Stratton, whose career was cut short in a tragedy that shocked Hollywood. Fans rewatch the film not just for its absurdity, but also to appreciate her screen presence. What makes Galaxina worth watching today isn't polish. It's the strangeness. It's an artifact from a time when everyone wanted a slice of Star Wars magic, even if they had no idea how to cook it. Imagine if Star Wars was retold as a space burlesque parody with half-finished sets and a deadpan android keeping the whole circus together. That's Galaxina. Flawed? Absolutely. But once you've seen it, you'll never forget it. Space Raiders 1983. Roger Corman was the undisputed king of cashing in on trends, and Space Raiders is one of his boldest reuses of old material. If Battle Beyond the Stars had already proven that Corman could cook up a cheap but fun Star Wars riff, Space Raiders showed just how far he was willing to stretch a budget. Released in 1983, this movie recycled entire special effects sequences from Battle Beyond the Stars, ships, explosions, and battles, straight up reused. But instead of being lazy, it weirdly worked, because the new story added just enough heart. The plot revolves around a group of space pirates led by Hawk, played with grizzled charm by Vince Edwards. During a raid on a planet, they accidentally pick up a young boy named Peter, who stows away on their ship. Suddenly, this hardened band of outlaws is saddled with protecting a child while dodging intergalactic lawmen and rival gangs. Sound familiar? Yes. Decades before The Mandalorian melted our screens, Space Raiders toyed with the same formula. A gruff outlaw reluctantly becomes a guardian to an innocent kid. Production was classic Corman. Sets were cobbled together from leftovers. Costumes looked like they'd been stitched up overnight, and dialogue wasn't exactly Shakespearean, but there's an undeniable charm. The relationship between Peter and Hawk gives the story an emotional spine that most knockoffs lack. And the recycled space battles? They actually look better than you'd expect for a film with such a tiny budget, because the effects came from James Cameron's early work on Battle Beyond the Stars. Critics didn't care. They saw the reused footage and rolled their eyes. But for kids in the 80 seconds who stumbled upon it on VHS or late-night TV, Space Raiders felt like a genuine space adventure. Over time, it's earned a reputation as one of Corman's smarter rip-offs, not because it's technically impressive, but because it's unexpectedly heartfelt. Why should you watch it today? Because it's proof that even recycled scraps can form something new when there's a bit of soul in the mix. Space Raiders is a cosmic patchwork quilt, stitched from leftovers, but still warm enough to pull over your shoulders on a nostalgic movie night. Star Odyssey, 1979. If you thought Star Wars was flashy, wait until you see Italy's neon-drenched answer, Star Odyssey. Directed by Alfonso Brescia, a man infamous for cranking out sci-fi knockoffs at lightning speed, this film looks like a disco ball collided with a bargain bin space opera. Released just 2 years after Star Wars, it was meant to prove that Italian cinema could play in the same galactic sandbox. What we got instead was a Hall of Fame entry in the category of So Bad It's Good. The story is as wild as the costumes. Earth is suddenly auctioned off to an evil overlord named Craze, who plans to enslave humanity. Our only hope? A ragtag team assembled by a wise professor, including androids, psychics, and a swordsman with glowing blades that look like fluorescent tubes from a hardware store. They train, they bicker, and eventually they launch an all-or-nothing attack on Craze's forces. On paper, it's classic space opera. On screen, it's pure chaos. The special effects? Let's just say they stretch the imagination. Ships float like they're suspended on fishing lines, lasers flicker like someone waved glow sticks in front of the camera, and space battles look like they were filmed in a foggy basement. Costumes are even more absurd. Villains in rhinestone-covered armor, heroes in capes that look borrowed from a carnival, and androids whose movements scream low battery. Yet here's the kicker. Star Odyssey has heart. For all its flaws, it embraces its insanity. The actors commit to their roles with surprising sincerity, delivering melodramatic speeches as if they were on a Shakespearean stage. The soundtrack, with its funky synth beats, feels more at home in a nightclub than a galaxy far, far away, but it adds to the surreal fun. Over the years, the film has built a cult reputation as one of Brescia's most entertaining disasters. Fans don't watch it for polish. They watch it because it's an unfiltered time capsule of late 70s Italian cinema trying to ride the Star Wars wave. Why should you watch it today? Because Star Odyssey is like finding a lost VHS tape of an alternate Star Wars made during a carnival. It's ridiculous, over the top, and unforgettable. If Star Wars is the polished diamond, Star Odyssey is the rhinestone-studded knockoff ring that still sparkles in its own weird way. Humanoid, 1979. Just when you thought Italy had peaked with Star Odyssey, along came Humanoid, a film that dared to ask, what if we remixed Star Wars with fantasy and hired James Bond's Jaws as the hero? Directed by Aldo Lado, this 1979 curiosity stars Richard Kiel, the towering actor best known for chomping through steel in the 007 franchise. Here, he plays Golob, a peaceful giant who gets transformed into a mindless super soldier by a villain's sinister plot. The story unfolds on a distant planet where evil ruler Graal, played with theatrical flair by Ivan Rasimov, seeks to conquer the galaxy using an experimental serum. When Golob falls victim to the serum, he becomes an unstoppable force, smashing through anything in his path. But hope emerges when a young boy with mysterious powers helps free Golob's mind, turning him into an unlikely champion against tyranny. If that sounds like a mashup of Star Wars, Superman, and a Saturday morning cartoon, you're not wrong. Visually, Humanoid delivers exactly what you'd expect from late 70s Italian sci-fi. Cheap sets, glowing lightsabers, knockoffs, and costumes that look like a thrift store blend of gladiator armor and spacesuits. The special effects are rough, but Kiel's presence gives the film an undeniable charm. Watching him lumber through action scenes feels both ridiculous and oddly endearing. Critics dismissed it immediately, calling it a lazy Star Wars imitation, but fans of cult cinema latched on. The film's sincerity, mixed with its bonkers script, made it a favorite among those who love sci-fi oddities. And while Kiel was never known for his dramatic range, his sheer size and gentle demeanor added a layer of unexpected warmth to the role. What makes Humanoid worth watching today isn't technical brilliance, it's the spectacle of seeing a beloved Bond villain step into the shoes of a spacefaring hero. It's proof that even the most unlikely casting can create something memorable. Humanoid is messy, campy, and deeply flawed, but it's also the kind of movie that keeps you glued to the screen just to see what wild thing it will throw at you next. If Star Wars was the blueprint for interstellar adventure, Humanoid is the doodle. A kid scrawled in the margins, clumsy, colorful, and oddly captivating. Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers 1986. Not all Star Wars ripoffs hit the big screen. Some invaded Saturday morning television. Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers is the proof. Debuting in 1986, this animated series took the space western vibe that George Lucas borrowed from Flash Gordon and Sergio Leone, then dialed it up with neon lasers, robotic horses, and an outlaw frontier aesthetic. It wasn't just an imitation, it was an attempt to create a cartoon Star Wars that kids could consume every weekday before school. The premise centers on Earth's first alliance with alien civilizations. To protect this new galactic order, the Galaxy Rangers, a team of enhanced lawmen, ride out to face criminals, interstellar tyrants, and mutant outlaws. Each ranger comes with a unique ability. Zachary Fox has a bionic arm that channels destructive blasts. Shane Gooseman, a genetically engineered soldier, can shift his body into different forms. Doc Hartford cracks computer systems with psychic-like tech skills. And Nico, a psychic warrior, reads minds and kicks plenty of intergalactic butt. Together, they're part Jedi, part cowboys, and part superheroes. What set Galaxy Rangers apart from other kids' shows was its mix of Western grit with futuristic tech. Instead of cutesy sidekicks and endless toy commercials, this series gave audiences surprisingly mature storytelling. Villains weren't just cartoon buffoons, they had genuine menace. Plots explored loyalty, corruption, and personal sacrifice. The animation wasn't Disney level, but it had a sharp, colorful style that still holds up in nostalgia rewatches today. Critics at the time overlooked it, chalked it up as another toy-driven cartoon in the post-Star Wars boom. But fans who grew up on it remember it as smarter, edgier, and more cinematic than most of its peers. It didn't just try to sell action figures, though yes, those existed. It aimed to capture the same mix of myth and adventure that made Star Wars universal. So why is Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers worth your time today? Because it's the closest thing to a lost Star Wars cartoon from the 82nds. Long before the Clone Wars, long before Rebels, kids were watching cyber cowboys duel across alien deserts, protecting justice in a galaxy filled with danger. It's rough, it's pulpy, and it's an underrated gem that deserves to be rediscovered. Slipstream 1989. What if Luke Skywalker went dark after Star Wars? Slipstream gives you a glimpse. This 1989 sci-fi adventure stars Mark Hamill, but not as a farm boy hero. This time he's John's, a ruthless lawman patrolling a ruined Earth with a sense of cold detachment. It's the closest Hamill ever came to playing an anti-hero in a space film, and it's fascinating to watch. The movie takes place in a future where natural disasters have altered the planet's geography, creating a powerful wind current known as the Slipstream. Instead of starships, people use gliders and small crafts to ride this current across barren landscapes. Into this setting crashes a fugitive android who looks human, a bounty hunter eager to cash in, and Hamill's Johns, determined to drag the prisoner back at any cost. The chase becomes a road trip through desolate canyons, strange settlements, and crumbling remains of civilization. Slipstream's production had all the ambition in the world, but little money to back it up. Directed by Steven Lisberger, who had made Tron, it promised a sweeping sci-fi epic, but budget cuts shrank it into something smaller and more experimental. Instead of grand space battles, you get intimate scenes with characters arguing philosophy while riding in gliders. Instead of dazzling effects, you get stunning real-world landscapes in Turkey and England standing in for the end of the world. What makes Slipstream intriguing is its cast. Alongside Hamill, you get Bill Paxton as the cocky bounty hunter, Bob Peck as the soulful android, and even cameos from Robbie Coltrane and Ben Kingsley. It's a mix of cult legends and award-winning actors, all thrown into a movie that looks like Star Wars wandered into a post-apocalyptic Western. Critics were baffled, audiences stayed away, and the film flopped. But in the decades since, Slipstream has gained a reputation as one of those strange, atmospheric sci-fi films that dared to be different. It may not have delivered the spectacle of Star Wars, but it gave us something else. A bleak, poetic glimpse of a future blown away by the wind. For Star Wars fans, Slipstream is worth watching simply to see Hamill stretch his wings, literally, as a darker, edgier figure. It proves that the man who played Luke Skywalker wasn't afraid to break away from the Force and dive into stranger territory. Caravan of Courage and Battle for Endor, 1984, 1985, yes. Believe it or not, even George Lucas created his own Star Wars knockoffs. In the mid-80 seconds, long before prequels or Disney+, Lucasfilm cashed in on the popularity of Return of the Jedi's furry sidekicks with two made-for-TV movies, Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure, 1984, and its sequel, Ewoks. The Battle for Endor, 1985. They were aimed squarely at kids and aired on ABC, but watching them today feels like stepping into an alternate timeline where Star Wars became a bedtime storybook. The first film, Caravan of Courage, introduces us to the Tawani family, whose starcruiser crashes on the forest moon of Endor. With their parents captured by a giant monster, the children team up with the Ewoks on a quest to rescue them. It's essentially a fantasy tale wrapped in Star Wars branding, more about magic crystals and woodland adventures than galactic empires. The second movie, Battle for Endor, takes a much darker turn, opening with tragedy that leaves little Sindel, Tawani, and Wicket the Ewok on the run from marauding raiders and an evil witch. The production values are decent for TV at the time, with impressive matte paintings, forest sets, and costumed Ewoks bouncing around. But it's obvious these weren't blockbuster projects. Instead of space battles, we get campfire magic. Instead of lightsabers, we get slingshots and fairy dust. Still, there's something fascinating about seeing Lucasfilm repackage its own universe into something this whimsical. Critics didn't take them seriously. Adults rolled their eyes. But for kids in the 80 seconds, these movies were pure imagination fuel. VHS copies circulated for years, and today, both films are available on Disney+, proving that even Lucas's oddest spin-offs have a place in the saga's history. Why are they worth watching? Because they reveal the strange flexibility of Star Wars. One year you're battling Darth Vader, the next you're watching Ewoks babysit stranded kids. They're uneven, yes, but also charming in their sincerity. And they remind us that Star Wars has always been many things at once: epic space opera, fantasy quest, and yes, sometimes even a children's fairy tale with teddy bears saving the day. So there you have it, 9 more Star Wars ripoffs that somehow rose above their shameless origins. Some are campy disasters that turned into cult treasures, others dared to mix genres, and a few even came straight from Lucas himself. But now, it's your turn. Which one of these galactic oddities deserves a rewatch? Have you braved the neon chaos of Star Odyssey, or do you secretly love the Ewok movies? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. After all, the galaxy of weird Star Wars clones is vast, and we've only scratched the surface.